Joining us, I'm Xiaoli Li. Officials from Noront Resources say Thunder Bay will have to compete with Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, and Timmins if it wants the mining company to build a ferrochrome smelter here. That was the message Wednesday night at a public consultation hosted by Noront. Luisa Alvarez reports.
Noront controls a large number of mining claims in the Ring of Fire, but has been unable to move forward with their Eagle's Nest nickel mine or a chromite mine due to the lack of access to the remote area. Despite that, the company is looking at locations to build a ferrochrome processing facility in northern Ontario. This meeting was a way to determine the level of community interest in a project of this size.
It'll take a number of years to permit an operation like this and get all the environmental approvals and so forth. So we want to gauge the level of interest. The community is on Great Lakes water, which is advantageous. There's also there's good power facilities here. We've seen very interesting material handling facilities, rail and so forth. So this community knows how to move products to market.
Noront officials say the plant itself would bring over 300 direct jobs and would be an $800 million to $1 billion investment for the company. But Thunder Bay is not the only community being considered. Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, and Sudbury are also in the running.
You know, we're very comfortable with the communities that we've been talking to, and they've been very aggressive, to be honest, about trying to get this business into their communities.
The meeting brought a big turnout, showing a high level of interest in the project. But mining officials say that level of enthusiasm shows further public consultations are required as more questions remain.
They need to develop their Eagle's Nest nickel-copper project, and that'll be on the heels of road development into the area that is required first for any of this material to come out. And that would include the chromite for long term. So that's one of the key questions. This material, even with permitting, couldn't be mined tomorrow. There's not access into the deposits.
Each of the 4 communities being considered, Sault Ste. Marie, Timmins, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay, will have to put forward a compelling proposal in order to win the development of the ferrochrome processing facility. It's essentially a competition between those communities in order to win the development. Noront officials will then choose based on those proposals which community wins. And they're hoping to have that decision by fall of this year. Luisa Alvarez, TVT News.
Police have laid new charges against a 22-year-old Greenstone man. On July 15th, OPP responded to a motor vehicle collision between a car and motorcycle on Highway 11 at Kenogamisis Dam Road. During the investigation, the car's driver fled into the bushes but was located and initially charged with criminal driving and impaired offenses causing bodily harm. The driver of the motorcycle was thrown from his vehicle into the ditch where he sustained severe injuries. He was flown to the Thunder Bay Health Sciences Center where his condition worsened and he eventually died. The car's driver now faces several other charges, including dangerous operation of a motor vehicle causing death and impaired driving causing death. The driver was scheduled to appear in court on Friday. A motor vehicle collision on Highway 17 west of Ignace has left 3 young residents of that community dead. Ontario Provincial Police responded to an incident involving a pickup truck and garbage truck shortly after 2 o'clock last Saturday afternoon. OPP have confirmed all 3 fatalities were passengers in the pickup. The driver of the garbage truck was taken to Dryden Regional Health Center with injuries. The highway was closed for almost 7 hours and traffic was rerouted at the Chappaqua and Atikokan Highway turnoffs. OPP say their investigation into the collision continues. A GoFundMe campaign has been started by members of the family to cover the costs of the funeral for the father and his 2 young boys. Initially, the goal was $25,000, but that's since been well exceeded by donors. Meanwhile, the OPP are saying very little about a death investigation in Dryden. All they are saying is that they were called after a woman was found unresponsive at a home in Wainwright Township on Wednesday morning. The Regional Crime Unit and the Forensic Identification Unit have both been called in to assist. Police say they'll not be releasing any further information on the case until their investigation is complete. Well, he's the man gunning to be the next Premier of Ontario. Patrick Brown made a stop in northwestern Ontario this past week, taking aim at provincial energy policies. The PC party leader says if his party wins power, he'd place an immediate ban on new energy contracts signed under the Green Energy Act. A warm welcome for PC leader Patrick Brown at Odina Foods in Kekabeka Falls on Monday. The rural grocery store has been hit hard by rising energy costs, and Brown says if he was premier, he'd put a stop to new provincial energy contracts. Contracts, he says, were won by political patronage and are driving the cost of hydro up.
Frankly, the Liberals and the NDP, there's not much difference. They both supported the Green Energy Act, these bad contracts. They both doubled down on it and continued to say that it made sense despite the fact since 2009 we've given away $6 billion in surplus electricity.
Brown cites Ontario's Auditor General, who wrote in 2015 that the province paid generators nearly $340 million to reduce production. Brown also slammed the Ontario Liberals for accepting donations from energy companies. At the same time, the Auditor General said Ontario was overpaying on renewable energy deals. Brown says the trend is continuing, with even more energy contracts due to be signed before October. The PC leader says the cost of those deals comes down on small businesses like Odina Foods. This is the second visit to Odina for Brown, who heard concerns of high hydro rates last year. But owner Kent Mayala says things haven't gotten any better, despite rate relief promised by Kathleen Wynne.
The strings get tight. The money sometimes isn't there to do what you want to do. But there's a lot of stuff that I want to do for my store to improve it, but I cannot. I wanted to put more energy efficient coolers and freezers into the store, which I can't really afford. I've done a few this year, and hopefully that's going to help me with my rates.
Brown won the PC leadership in 2015, defeating former member Christine Elliott on the first ballot. However, recent Forum research polling says that while the Tories hold a 20-point lead over the Grits, 45% of people couldn't say what issues are important to Brown.
The closer we get to an election, there'll be greater scrutiny of all the parties telling where we stand. But let me say very clearly where I stand on policies. I'm going to fix Kathleen Wynne's hydro mess. I'm going to stop these sweetheart deals for massive overgeneration. I'm going to close the ethical loopholes at Queen's Park.
There's still no word as to when local PC riding associations will select candidates for next year's election. The last PC member Thunder Bay sent to Queen's Park was Mickey Hennessy in 1985. But despite that, Brown was bullish about his party's chances next June, citing the recent PC win in the Sault Ste. Marie by-election as evidence of a desire for change. Shaoli Lee, TBT News. There's a new face seeking the NDP nomination for Thunder Bay Superior North in next year's provincial election. Alain Lauzon, a French Catholic school board trustee, has announced he wants to be the new Democratic candidate for next June's election. Originally from Kapuskasing, the bilingual Lauzon has lived in Thunder Bay since 2007. The NDP banner was last carried by City Councillor Andrew Folds in 2014, who lost the election to Michael Gravel. The Liberal MPP has held the riding since '95, but Lauzon says he sees strong support for the NDP in the region.
The opportunity is there for me to advocate for this riding in a party that has a very strong power base in the north. I believe that items like the Ring of Fire is a constant issue that hasn't seemed to get solved. We have people within the NDP that work very hard to get the portfolio moving, and I look forward to being able to advocate for the region within the NDP caucus.
Folds was not available for comment on whether he too will be seeking that NDP nomination. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women says hearings in Thunder Bay, originally scheduled for September, will be delayed until December. However, the former Minister of Status of Women says she still has confidence in the inquiry. Patty Haidu was one of 6 MPs who attended a Northern Ontario Liberal caucus meeting in Thunder Bay on Thursday, and she expressed her continuing support for the inquiry's work. For months, Patty Haidu heard testimony from families prior to the formal launch of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. And now, with the latest 3-month delay for local hearings, she says it still has her support.
I know that the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, who is the lead minister, is prepared to step in. In fact, if the inquiry is stalled in any way, but right now we have confidence that they are going to get over the hurdles that they're facing and that they will continue continue to lead forward.
Haidu was at a meeting of the Northern Ontario Liberal Caucus. She was joined by Thunder Bay Rainy River MP Don Rusnak, Caucus Chair Mark Saray of Nickel Belt, Paul Lefebvre of Sudbury, as well as Anthony Rota of Nipissing-Temiskaming and Terry Sheehan of Sault Ste. Marie. Absent, however, was former caucus chair and five-term Kenora MP Bob Nault. Why isn't member Nault here?
Bob was already MP Nault was already scheduled to do a tour across the riding in Kenora. So he's doing about several First Nations communities. They already had a week planned.
Despite Nault's absence, Saray says the caucus was able to identify a number of priorities for the fall session of Parliament, specifically Indigenous health, infrastructure, affordable housing, and jobs.
One thing that we know is important is jobs in the north. Over the last many years and last decades, we've seen the forest industry and the resource industry suffer tremendous losses. So we're looking at ways that we can advocate for economic opportunity here in the north.
The House of Commons resumes sitting on September 18th. Xiaoli Li, TBT News. Dryden City Council is officially down one member as the resignation of Councillor Daryl Skinner has fully taken effect. Skinner's last council meeting was July 17th, and council has now been put to the task of finding a replacement. Skinner was appointed in 2015 to replace Ken Moss when he stepped down from his seat. According to Mayor Greg Wilson, council has 60 days to fill the vacancy and has several options on how to do it.
Actually do anything we want. Like, there's a broad scope at our that we can of options that we can consider. So for example, if we decide we wanted to just pick the next person on the list in terms of the last vote that happened, we can do that, or we can go to the public and say anybody who wants to apply, or we can have councillors just recommend names, whatever we want to do. So the way it was left was we're going to consider anybody from the public.
Wilson says he hopes the new councillor will be chosen in August. The next municipal election is scheduled for the fall of 2018. Coming up next, First Nations students from Muskrat Dam boycott the CLE Fun Fair. Welcome back. Dryden's downtown core has taken many hits in recent years, with many storefronts sitting empty, but that could change this summer through a contest that could grant one lucky business dreamer a year without a major expense. Christina Jung reports.
Starting a business is an extremely hard task with expenditures galore. But what if you didn't need to worry about the rent? That's a possibility for one lucky potential business in Dryden through the Chamber of Commerce's Win This Space competition, a contest that pits entrepreneurs against one another in a chance to win a year's worth of rent in a storefront. Lorna Wood is the manager of the Dryden Chamber. She says they got the idea for the contest during a meeting with the Economic Development Officer of Huron East, who had run the contest with great success in their region.
We looked into it a little bit further, contacted Jan Hawley of Huron East, and she's been helping us, she's been mentoring us basically through the contest. We recognized it as a good fit for Dryden and something that could certainly help revive the downtown core here.
Wood says so far the response has been overwhelming. Entrants will have to attend 3 mandatory business education sessions in addition to being selected by the 5-judge panel. Wood believes the contest has the possibility of going further than the initial competition.
This contest will produce one winner who will choose their location. But in Huron East, if we're half as lucky as they were, the other contestants may very well choose to look at starting their business anyway, regardless of whether they win the contest or not.
Dryden Mayor Greg Wilson agrees the contest could work for the community and hopes it'll inspire potential entrepreneurs in the city.
Great, it'll get more people thinking about, well, I do have a good idea, and my problem is I've been working out of my basement for so long, and I think I should make a move to, you know, somewhere in town for a more visible location. So I think it's really great that the Chamber's come up with this idea or adopted this idea, I should say, and run with it. So kudos to them.
The submission period runs until July 31st, and entrepreneurs are encouraged to enter soon. Christina Jung, TBT News.
Teenage students at a remote First Nation are hoping to send a message to the city of Thunder Bay by boycotting this year's Canadian Lakehead exhibition. Next month's CLE brings crowds in the thousands each year, many of them youth from remote First Nation reserves around the Northwest. But with growing concerns about safety of Indigenous youth in Thunder Bay, grades 7 and 8 students in Muskrat Dam have collectively decided to stay away from the CLE Fun Fair. Chief Stan Beardy says it's out of concern for their safety.
Statement. I think they're very concerned about if they have to come to Thunder Bay for high school in September. I think that's what they're getting at. They need to raise an awareness. And when somebody tells you that they're very scared for their own safety, for their own lives, I think that's a message that we need to pay attention to.
Beardy adds the Muskrat Dam Band Council fully supports the decision made by the students. He expects there may be similar discussions happening in other First Nations communities. CLE President Al Law has not responded to a request for an interview. A Thunder Bay author has unveiled her latest book, which documents murders in the rural areas around the city dating back to the early 1880s. Kim Casey spent over 3 years collecting information and writing her second nonfiction book about murders in and around Thunder Bay. Casey examined multiple murders from 1885 to 2016 within Thunder Bay District. She says many sources went into the final product.
The Thunder Bay Public Library, they're a great resource for historical, and then I branched out to Ontario Archives, Library and Archives Canada, the Penitentiary Museum Association, which is based in Kingston. There's so many vast resources.
Casey's book can be purchased at Gallery 33 or at the Flying J truck stop in Pass Lake. Coming up after the break, we visit an artist in Atikokan who builds sci-fi models out of foam. Welcome back. Well, many residents in the Northwest spend their spare time fixing up cars or fishing. One man in Atikokan has found a unique hobby. Jamie Young has delved into the art of building foam models of sci-fi and fantasy props and logos. Adam Riley has more.
If I'm building something, I sometimes have to borrow one of my kids' toys to actually to look at some detail and build.
Jamie Young goes to work like every other resident in northwestern Ontario, but when he comes home, he spends his off hours building replicas of the things we see on TV shows and in the movies. An artist for most of his life, Young says he is always looking for a new way to challenge himself, and as luck would have it, that challenge presented itself 6 years ago.
I've always wanted to build stuff. Ever since I was a kid, I was building stuff, you know, Lego, whatever. And a couple of people on a website called the RPF, which is the Replica Prop Forum, they were making Iron Man costumes out of these foam floor tiles. My wife and I just moved into this house, and in the basement was a stack load of them. So I figured, why not give it a go? I'm always looking for a new medium to try.
So far, Young's creations, including the scale model of an Imperial AT-AT from Star Wars, have been featured in magazines, web pages, and he's been bringing parts of his collection to sci-fi and fantasy conventions in Thunder Bay for the past 3 years. Each one carefully constructed with lots of attention paid to the details, some even taking upwards of 200 hours to create. Young says it's always a treat to see the reactions of those who see his work.
That's when the excitement really takes place, because having been to conventions, you know, oh, it's another R2 unit, oh, it's another BB-8, oh, I've seen lots of those. Hang on a minute, it's made out of what? That's what gets them.
And what does the rest of the Young family think of Jamie's creations?
I have a very understanding wife, thankfully. My kids, they love it. They are very supportive. They often come home telling me that their friends are like, oh, you're so lucky, you have BB-8, you have an R2 unit, you have all this in your basement, and can I come over and see it?
Young's creations will be on display again this fall in Thunder Bay for ThunderCon 2017. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Travelers in Thunder Bay can now fly to Fort Hope, Webequie, as well as other First Nations communities in the Northwest using North Star Air's newest aircraft. This two-engine turboprop, which holds 44 passengers, is the newest addition to North Star Air's fleet. Traveling to remote First Nation communities like Fort Hope, officials say they added this aircraft as a way to meet growing demand.
We're adding this aircraft to this specific route. It goes to Fort Hope, Webequie, and Lansdowne House. And we're adding it just because just the demand for this type of aircraft, as well the number of seats. It's because of its ability to land in remote gravel, shorter runways, so it's ideal.
Beardy says this aircraft has been in service since last Friday, and due to demand, it's now scheduled to fly twice a day. Well, it certainly wasn't Winnie the Pooh that woke up a Dorian woman and her family last weekend.
Hello. What are you doing in our yard?
Mary Saul Deely came face-to-face with this small black bear at around 6 o'clock Saturday morning. She woke up to hear something making noise outside her bedroom. After making sure the area was safe with no signs of the mom, Deely videotaped her encounter.
Young, it was inexperienced. It was obviously playing and fooling around because it climbed up on our vehicles and things like that. And it ran so scared that it banged right into the fence that's around our tree there. And I saw its shape there, I knew the size, and I thought, well, I might as well have something fun to show my friends my start to the weekend, right?
Since Saturday, the video's been viewed on YouTube more than 54,000 times. One of the cornerstones of towns across northwestern Ontario are community centres. They provide a place for residents to stay healthy and active, but many of those facilities are aging and in need of renovations, in some cases complete replacement, so they can continue to provide service. Recently, the mayor of Dryden proposed constructing a brand new recreation complex estimated at $80 million. It would fill the needs of the small town and many northern First Nations who travel to Dryden for sports tournaments. And last month, Atikokan unveiled its retrofitted pool and arena, which came in at a cost of $5.5 million. Now the community of Marathon is looking towards establishing a new recreation and community center for its residents. CAO Daryl Skwarczynski says they're in the second phase of the project, which is looking at possible locations for the complex.
Ours dates back to the early 1970s, so certainly has reached its useful life, and it is time to plan for capital replacement. So really we're in stage 2 of a broad public consultation process to select a site to locate a new facility in Marathon with the intent of looking to build it within the next 5 to 7 years.
Skwarczynski says the public has told them they like the current complex. They're just looking for something a bit more modern. He says more details, including engineering specs and cost, will come next year. Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next week.